When you bring your beets in from the garden, one of the first things you want to do is cut off the tops. The tops are going to continue to try and make the plant grow, and they're going to be drawing moisture and nutrients from the beet itself, so that it's going to cause deterioration. So cut the tops off, but leave about 1 to 2 inches there, because it's going to cause the plant to bleed if you either try to peel it before you cook it, or if you try to take the tops off, or if you cut the root off. This is basically the way you want it to be when you put it in the pot to cook. We're going to do pickled beets today, and I've gone ahead and cooked these ahead of time for you. Even doing that much, we have a lot of bleeding and so on. Don't try to scrub them extensively ahead of time either, because you'll find a lot of dirt will come off in that cooking water, but it's just going to be something you throw away. Once you get them peeled, you can take off the tops. You can also very easily peel the skin away. Then you won't have any trouble at all going ahead with the next step. At this point, once you get all this peeling off, you're going to want to slice the beets into about 1/4 inch thick slices. Now when you cook them, you want to sort them out so that you have similar sizes in the water at the same time, and they'll take covered in boiling water somewhere between 25 to 35 minutes depending on the size. But once you get that done, then you can combine different sizes together, because you're going to slice them or cut them into similar sizes anyway. Basically, you want to have everything pretty much the same size in the jar that you go ahead and can. As I said, these are then going to get cut into about 1/4 inch thick slices. If you have some that are a lot larger, you may want to cut the slices in half so that they'll all be pretty much uniform when they get into the jar that you're ready to pickle. These I'm going to set aside, and we'll get a pot here for us for the next step. Now this we're going to make the brine in. Now the brine is going to consist of, I've cut the recipe in half so that you'll be seeing me use half the ingredients. The brine itself would work to make about 8 pints of pickled beets, and you'd use about 7 pounds of beets to start with in order to do this. We're going to use, since we're cutting it in half, we've got 2 cups of vinegar. Now you want to make sure that you're using a commercially made vinegar that's got between about 5% acidity or 4 to 6 grain. Somewhere in that area, it will tell you right in the label. You can use whatever kind of vinegar flavor you like. Cider vinegar is usually very good for this. Distilled white vinegar would also work very well. But make sure that you know what the acidity is, because we're going to be taking a product that is low acid, and we need to make sure we have enough acid so that when we're finished, the product will be safe to eat and safe to sit on the shelf. And you can't do that if you're using your own homemade product, homemade vinegar. Now at the next step, we're going to add 1/4 of a cup of canning or pickling salt. Now you could use regular table salt with this. However, it may cause the brine to get cloudy, and the problem with that is not necessarily quality so much, but cloudy brine is one of the indicators of spoilage. So that if your brine later on is cloudy and you don't know whether it's because you have a spoilage microorganism in there that might make you sick or just cause you to have to throw those beets away, or whether it's because you simply used the wrong kind of salt. So look in the market for canning or pickling salt. It's very easy to come by. The next step would be 2 cups of sugar. And finally, 2 cups of water will go into this. Now the next item that we're going to add to this are some whole spices. Now some recipes will call for ground spices. However, the whole spices you can put into a cheesecloth bag, as we have here. We have 2 sticks of cinnamon and about 12 whole cloves. And we'll tie this together, and we can then put this in there, and then at the end of the cooking time, we'll be able to pull it back out. The benefit to that is that ground spices, it will cause the brine to be very cloudy. You can't remove them later on. And whole spices that you don't take back out also may cause darkening in the areas where they come in contact. So it's nice to be able to get this back out. We're then going to put this on the stove, bring it to a boil, and when it comes to a boil, we'll add our beets to it. Beets are then going to simmer in that hot water or hot brine for about 5 minutes. Once the beets have simmered for 5 minutes in the brine, they're ready to can. Now the next step we have to do here is to make sure we take that spice bag out. And as I said, once you've got it since we have them in the little bag, it's very easy. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of trouble tracking down those little cloves and so on in order to make sure that everything comes out. Make sure that you use jars that are made for canning. Check the jars ahead of time to make sure that the rims are in good condition, that you don't have any cracks or so on. You want to make sure you have jars made for canning because these are usually quite hot, and we want to make sure that when the hot brine and the hot beets hit these, we don't cause any cracking. We want to fill them to the 1/2 inch mark. Now what I can advise you to do is go ahead and see if you can get it pretty much just the beets in it first. We'll worry about getting the brine in just a minute. Now what I'm going to do at this point is go ahead and tap these a little bit with my hand. We want to make sure that we get them packed as tightly as possible without overpacking. And this works basically the same way that we have settling when you get breakfast cereal. You'll read on the box that it may not look full because it's had some settling during transportation. Just jiggling it. Now you don't want to tap it against the kitchen counter because that may actually cause the jar to break. And we need to treat the jars as carefully as we can. Now, don't worry about getting it completely full at this point, but remember to look for the 1/2 inch mark. You can find that by following the bead down and around to the middle point there where the bead ends. At that point in time, we're going to be ready to try and add some brine to this and fill that up also to the 1/2 inch mark. Now, if at all possible, we want to try and get it as close to having the beets under the liquid as well as having everything at the 1/2 inch mark. And again, it's not necessary to get it exactly at this point because we're going to have to be doing some finagling with it in all probability. Now, in order to determine when you have it at the 1/2 inch mark, you're going to have to get down at eye level and check it. But before I do that, I want to get the air pockets out. And if you can see around here, you can see that there are air pockets. Use a plastic knife to get the air pockets out. If you don't get them all out, one of the things we tend to find is that they may boil over. That's one of the frequent causes of boil over. Get down, check it at eye level. Make sure that if you have too many beets, you take one out, try and get them all in there. We could add a little bit more to this. Maybe about one more brine and a little bit more liquid. Try and get them all under. At this point, we need to use a clean cloth. Paper towels work real well for this because you're apt to just go ahead and reuse a cloth and rather than throwing it away. Run around the rim with it to make sure that it's good and clean. At that point, you get one of your lids out, put it on there, one of the rings, and tighten it down firmly tight. This then goes in the canner when you have all the other jars ready, and we'll put them in a boiling water bath canner for 30 minutes if you live at 1,000 feet or less, and for 35 minutes if you live above 1,000 and between 3,000. We'll process this, and that's all there is to it. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.